To Costly Conversations. I'm super excited because we have Jordan of A Better Way 2A. I'm super excited because he's been doing something just so incredibly different than what probably I would say like 90% of us in the broader gun space has been doing, in the sense that he's willing to have conversations, and kind of broaden the scope and change the way that we are perceived by kind of the interactions that we have. I'm not going to try to over explain it because I think he can do the best job of explaining it, but let's go ahead and dive into it. I did want to let you guys know that if you're streaming on X, or if you are in the locals feed, we'll keep the locals feed going. We'll keep the X feed going for maybe 15 minutes, but then I need you guys to hop over to YouTube or locals. YouTube.com/at Costly Pod. And my name is Aaron. Welcome to Costly Conversations. Jordan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Aaron. I appreciate it.
Yeah. No, I'm happy you're here. I know it can be kind of a struggle to pull away from the family. We are recording on a Sunday for those who care, and to borrow one of the voices of 2A on a Sunday afternoon when you could be doing anything else, it's an honor to have you on. Thanks,
Thank you,
man.
man. Yeah, I was super pumped to come on, and I'm really glad that you gave me the opportunity to speak.
Well, you're too kind. Let's talk a little bit about. I mean, we were just talking about some of the most fascinating topics of, like, right before we started recording, we were talking about like kind of where we lie politically, and like how those interactions kind of form, and how to solve things like gun violence in the inner city. And really, does anyone really have the answer? I'm sure somebody does, but let's, before we dive into like deep topics like that, let's kind of introduce you to the audience. I did a horrible job of trying to like explain what you do. Can you just explain for a second, what do you do and why are you so impactful right now in the Second Amendment community overall?
Well, you did great, man. I mean, you pretty much summarized it. So I started A Better Way 2A to make the gun community more inclusive to everybody that wanted to take advantage of the right to own a gun for whatever reason, be that self-defense, hunting. I've been a gun owner for over a decade now, and when I got my pistol permit, I was completely unaware that I was, uh, part of a community that had kind of historically been more catered to people who look like me and act like me, and at the time politically were like me. And it wasn't until after the Pulse nightclub shooting that I thought, hey, there might be some people who want to learn to protect themselves from the LGBTQ community specifically, who don't really know where to go with that. So I put my name out there just before Better Way 2A was a thing, as a resource on this website called Operation Blazing Sword. And a gay couple from a couple towns over reached out to me, and I wasn't an instructor at the time or anything, but they wanted me to teach them how to shoot. And I came to learn that there was this portion of the population who felt this sense of intimidation, preventing them from owners and taking classes, and really getting involved and being able to take advantage of that right that we all have. And when I dove deeper into it, I realized that it's not just gay people, it's not just people from the LGBTQ community, it's people like left of center, um, women. It's a very masculine hobby historically.
Yep.
Not that there aren't a ton of excellent women in the gun community, but it's not typically been something that has been really easy for people outside of the normal gun owner kind of persona to access, whether it be false, perceptions of what the community's like, or actual experiences they've had with other gun owners. So I started A Better Way 2A just to kind of promote the idea that it is for everybody. It's here for everybody to take advantage of. Everybody should take advantage of it. And, with the end goal of just kind of showing people that it's something that we all benefit from. And by doing so, getting more people to vote pro 2A. which unfortunately is becoming harder and harder for a lot of people. But that's really the goal of it all, is just to show people that guns are for everybody. The right to own a gun is for everybody, and there are communities for everybody out there within this space.
Yeah, I love that. I can really appreciate your want to really try to, inclusive is such a funny word, especially in the gun community. It's like, oh, I want to be inclusive. And it's just like,
Yeah.
okay, flower boy, like get it together. Like let's
Yeah, for
let's
sure.
let's let's get off this moral posturing slash what's the word that people like to virtue signaling type
Oh,
thing,
yes,
and virtue signaling is real from both
for
the left
sure.
and the right. I know I don't think you'd consider yourself a leftist per se. Can you just
I would no, I wouldn't say. I definitely have people who have called me a leftist for things that I believe,
sure, yeah.
which is funny because I talked to my buddy, actually the co-host of the podcast, who calls himself a libertarian with a lowercase l,
Yeah.
and I've never heard that before, and I really don't know where I fit politically. I've never really been able to put a label on it. I believe that everybody should be treated as a human, like treat people the way you want to be treated, kind of
Yeah.
thing. And everybody has the same rights as everybody else. So
Mm,
that's kind of like where I fall as far as the baseline.
yeah.
And I was never called a leftist before I started advocating for the right to bear arms for everybody. And
Yeah.
that was like,
That's
it
weird.
was funny because
That's weird because that's like the most pro 2A thing I've heard all day. You
it's
would think
super
you'd be
weird
some sort of
because,
staunch conservative like Trump
yeah.
2025 thing,
Well,
whatever
and
year it is.
yeah, I still get called a Nazi by people on the left. I still get
Funny.
called Trumper by Moms Demand Action fans, and
Mm,
it's just for advocating that we should have the right to do so, for advocating for education in schools, for gun safety. Um, and then I get called a communist for saying that socialists, leftists, communists, whatever, also have the same rights as us, regardless of whether you agree
mm.
with them or not.
Yeah,
So
I've
it
I've
is
been
what it is.
seeing some interesting dialogue, even from guys like Brandon Herrera, who I've met him twice. He seems like a nice enough guy. He's always been
Yeah,
respectful to me, but he's been kind. I guess him and some of the people who I don't want to say like vibe with him and his more, I guess, aggressive views get kind of weird at the idea of like a self-proclaimed communist or like a self-proclaimed leftist coming out to train with them or something like that. Like we're
yeah,
training the enemy. Like, oh, these guys are going to take up arms against us. I'm like, I don't know. Like if we have like World War III or Revolutionary War, not Revolutionary War, but Civil War II, I'm not sure it's going to be against a leftist. Like I really am not quite sure. But who knows? As in like the communist leftist. Who
yeah.
knows? Like if people are
I
kind
yeah.
of excited for that, but
I,
I'm
I
not.
look at it like no, I think if you're excited for a civil war and shooting your neighbors, you got other issues. But that's not that we don't all daydream sometimes, but
Ooh, ooh, allegedly.
nah, yeah, allegedly. Um, I think it's one thing to say that, uh, hey, I don't feel comfortable training these people. It's another thing to say that these people aren't people and they don't have rights.
Mhm.
And that's kind of where I'm at, where it's like, I don't. So, for example, like I have a lot of, like I was saying, I have friends who are conservative. I have friends who are socialist, kind of all over the spectrum. A lot of my farther left leaning friends hate cops. And
Yeah.
coincidentally, a lot of the people that you're going to get an education from in the gun community are former military, former law enforcement. So my
Mhm.
thing that I have always told people is get good education instead of getting education from people you agree with. Like if you have one
Mm.
option or the other, get an education from people who are going to teach you good skills and good habits, not just from somebody who aligns with you politically. Because if you could find somebody who does both, great. But I don't
Mhm.
necessarily think we're there yet. As far as like crazy. I know a couple, but there's you're more likely to get training from somebody that you disagree with if you're on the left. And
Yeah.
likewise, I'll never tell somebody that, hey, you got to train people you disagree with politically. It's a free country. You can do whatever you want.
It is a free country,
And I love
but
that.
it does so the that attitude I feel like does contribute to some of the issues that you've had to step in and address, which if you can fill a niche and it helps another guy keep a clear conscience or he can sleep at night or whatever, You're right. It is a free country. If I don't feel like
Yeah.
training guys who paint themselves orange and like tattoo their eyeballs because I just think it's a little odd. I feel like that's like a mental health concern at this point. You know, I think I should be able to decline that service. Um, but like you said, it the 2A community is a little bit it kind of struggles because it's like my first not my first, my second license to carry class when I moved back to Texas. It's me. I'm a black dude for those who don't know for some reason.
For those who are listening and not watching.
Right. And who've never seen like a picture, right? It's me and another couple in this license to carry course, also a black couple. Um, and for some reason, the instructor starts going on about how the Democrats and the gun grabbers and stuff like that, and just kind of that conversation where it's like the Democrats are coming for your guns and this and this and that, and it's like everyone in this room, like statistically, is probably a Democrat. I'm not. I don't know what these folks are. I mean, they've potentially they've been working with him for a while, so he feels kind of loose lipped and comfortable enough to kind of go on like that. But that to me, that's just not a the proper professional thing to do. And I think as I started to kind of get into the gun space and have these conversations, these costly conversations here on the podcast or in real life or in DMs. I've had a lot of conversations through DMs. Oh my gosh. And people are like,
Yeah,
yeah,
same.
so I'm uncomfortable just because, for a long, long time, we really focused a lot of the conversations on specifically just the black gun space. A lot of folks were like, yeah, I'm really uncomfortable even walking into a gun store because one, I'll feel like I'll be treated differently, treated like an idiot, or kind of just stared at like some sort of enigma. And or I'm gonna walk in and there's gonna be a giant like vote for Trump banner, which vote for who you want to. It's your place of business. But unfortunately, the messaging can be somewhat aggressive and heavy handed and like in your face. And if you're not comfortable with heavy political um, messaging with your 2A, you're gonna have a really hard time.
Yeah.
as I'm sure you've seen. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
That's that's one of the things that I feel like is a huge barrier. Like I was saying, there's people have had real experiences like that that have turned people off from becoming gun owners. And there's also a ton of perceived experiences out there
Hmm.
because of it's like heuristics, the evolutionary trait that is built into every single one of us, where we can take a quick snapshot of a situation and make an
Hmm.
assumption based on that to keep ourselves
Mm.
quote unquote safe. The way that we've grown to see things with sharp teeth as dangerous,
Yeah.
the way that we've grown to know that like cold is bad for us. And it's unfortunately, as intelligent we've become as a species, we're still monkeys. Like we're not we're not, we can't break free of that evolutionary trait. And it is really prevalent in politics. There are
Hmm.
tons of times that I've had conversations with people who have made assumptions. So perfect example, what was it? New Mexico, the governor recently banned carrying in public. Was that
Mm.
that was a couple months ago? Was it New
Yeah,
Mexico, I
yeah,
think?
yeah, yeah. That's correct. It was New Mexico, and she like banned like
Or
was it
tried to, and it
or
got
tried to,
squashed
and
pretty
it
quickly.
got
But
hit like within
yeah,
a few days,
yeah.
and people
So
were
there was a
protesting and stuff. It was crazy.
Exactly, which was great. There was a ton of pushback against it, and I posted a video saying, as left-leaning gun owners, because we have a ton of followers who are who identify as left-leaning gun owners, this is your opportunity to talk to people who you may disagree with on other issues about how pro-gun you are, and use that as kind of like a bridge to discuss maybe the other issues at some point in time.
Mm.
But to show that you have, to use a leftist term, solidarity in this space where you are also fighting for your right to own guns, and that you're breaking the stereotype, the left leaning, like the liberal quote unquote stereotype that a lot of conservative gun owners see. And I got a ton of pushback from people saying, I would never stand out there with people that want to see me dead. I would never stand out there with some, because there was a guy with a Trump flag, and people assume that Trump flag, it's a Trumper and conservative and Nazi and all this like crazy buzzword stuff that
Mm-hmm.
goes through people's heads. And it's prevalent on the right too, don't get me wrong, but it's just
Mm-hmm.
so damaging to the conversation that we should be having, that is like, we agree on way more than we disagree with. If we could just get past the 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 outlier the outlying issues that really seem to divide us. And it is yeah, it really just comes down to people having those preconceived notions about people that they've never met, based
Right.
on, like you said, walking into a gun store and seeing a Trump flag or a Trump sign, that somebody could make assumptions about that place that they're not welcome.
Right.
And vice versa, if you were to walk into a gun store run by a communist with a hammer and sickle flag behind the counter, and a conservative walked in there, he'd probably be like, yeah, I'm not going to vibe well with these people. But you
Right.
don't even know the people yet.
Yeah, you really don't know. Like they could make the meanest risotto you've ever had, and they want you to come over
Yeah.
for lunch or dinner or whatever. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, like let's go shooting, and I'm gonna show you some old Russian, because like if anyone's ever spent any time with like leftist gun community, they love their old like Russian style
Red
guns.
fuds.
It's hilarious. Red
That's the
fuds.
term I've learned, man. Red FUD. It's like, yeah, and it's
Uh-huh.
it's prevalent. And it's not like as prevalent as I think it was years ago. Thank God, because you
Mhm.
got really good pages and people out there kind of in the left leaning space pushing that. Hey, just because you like a gun doesn't mean it's good.
Right. It's like,
Because there were people like saying, "Oh, an SKS is just as good as an AR" for years, and
hmm,
that's like it's not any better than
that's
regular
hilarious.
futtery. It
That's
is. It is
hilarious.
hilarious.
It's like it's just as good.
No,
Okay,
no.
buddy.
There
Okay,
are very
buddy.
few things that are just as good as something else that is completely superior.
Right. No, that's crazy. I'm glad we kind of cracked into that early. So I know you said you kind of like going back to your origin story. Dun dun. Like we saw the Pulse nightclub shooting. You put yourself out there, said like, "Hey, I'll train people." You said Blazing Sword. Is that like a gun site? Is that like a gay site? Like what is Blazing Sword?
Operation Blazing Sword was a site specifically for people in the LGBTQ community and allies to put their information out there
Mhm.
to prospective gun owners, to say like, "Hey, you can come to me for information."
Okay, cool. So
Yeah,
with that, you said, "Hey, I'm going to put myself out there because I don't care what you look like, who you like. I want you to come train with me." And
pretty
then
much.
you had people take. So you went from training one couple to what, training 1,000 couples, or like, "Hey, let's make an organization. Let's do a podcast." Like, how did that progress?
Yeah, so it started. I got my instructor certification essentially to train this specific couple, because I had told them, I'm not an instructor. I can't actually like certify you to do that. Um, and that was kind of my intention. I trained 3 other people from that website, and then really just figured that I could do more good, um, on a grander scale, by starting a better way to it and making it and bringing it to the internet essentially, and turning it into more of an idea than me physically going and teaching people how to shoot. Um, and you know how fast people share memes and things like that. That's really what
Yeah.
it started as. Was like, hey, I'm gonna
Mm,
make some memes, and hopefully they jive with people. And it was definitely a rocky start at first, but now we've got just over 10,000 followers after a few years, and a really dedicated following of people who aren't all leftists or all in the LGBTQ community, but are just people who who agree that the right to own a gun and defend yourself is for everybody. So that's kind of where it went with that. I went into, I think we started selling stickers. I started this on the third floor, on a third floor apartment where I used to live, selling stickers, packaging things in envelopes on the floor, and went to patches, went to some military surplus, and then kind of just was like, hey, what can I sell to kind of get people started and spread the message. And it just turned into what we have now, which is, I'm still running it out of my house more or less, but it's significantly bigger than it was when I started. I think we've doubled in size every year. as far as sales go and reach. And it's been great. That's where we're at now. We're going to SHOT Show this year, myself and my
Nice.
co-host on my podcast, and we're doing the Pew Peep show in San Antonio in April. So
I've heard of the Pew Peep show. I'm trying to get in, like, invited. Like, hey, buddy, like, we like what you do. Come, could you come on? Because
yeah, yeah.
I don't like paying to go places. Like, yeah, y'all know me. We're
Paying sucks.
family,
Paying sucks. Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And then I get real convicted because somebody will be like, if you have an artist friend, you should support them. Don't ask them for free stuff. Buy their stuff. Support their small business. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh my gosh, I wish people would support my small business. I
that
gotta
hit me.
support theirs. Conviction.
I
Yes.
feel that. I feel
Right.
that.
But also when you're working on a limited budget, it's just like the more stuff we can do and just kind of like just do, like
Oh,
how
100%.
can I help you? It would help so much.
100%.
Yeah. So help me to understand. So you guys do the podcast, um, and you I know you sell the merch and stickers and stuff like that, and you have the online presence. Is that mostly the gist of it, or do you guys? You might have said it. I'm sorry. Are you guys still out there like training? Like, what's the operation?
Yeah, so most of it is online and selling things. I do some legislative work on my own, just in my own state, really. That's as far as my reach goes. But representing a better way to a with whoever wants to join me. We went to the most recent protest at the Capitol. It was on
What state?
it was Connecticut.
Connecticut. Okay.
They just in the most recent chunk of legislation that our state passed, they banned the open carry of firearms. And
Hmm.
up until that point, it was never really an issue. It was just kind of like a notch on the belt for the Democrats to say that they were doing something. Nobody's
Yeah.
ever intimidated people at voting stations, like open
Right.
carrying or anything like that.
It's like some
But it was
false
one of those
66.
exactly, and it was one of
Mhm.
those things that they were like, we're really sticking it to the gun owners if we can ban open carry. So I personally don't open carry because I think it puts you at a tactical disadvantage. But
Mhm.
I borrowed my buddy's outside the waistband holster, and I went up there wearing a shirt that said it was never about hunting in pride colors on the back. And like, I'm not gay. I'm not, I'm not part of the LGBTQ community, but I polled a bunch of my friends who are, and I put it out on the site saying like, hey, would that be cool, or is that weird for a straight dude to be doing that? And I just did it as a way to show people who were there that there were people not that didn't fit their idea of a gun owner
Right.
who were showing up and
It's
doing it.
not some, hot the top end of 45 only carries a 1911, you know.
Exactly. Exactly. And I got a lot of really positive feedback from it. A bunch of people came up to me, and some people recognized me from the internet. Some people just saw the shirt and knew where it came from. And it was really cool. It was
Yeah.
nice to meet people and really just have that kind of presence. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
pretty much the gist of it, man. I mean, I've done I've spoken at the Capitol before, just as far as testimony goes against in support of certain pro 2A bills and against anti 2A bills. But that's pretty much it, man. Online, the podcast and the store.
That's awesome. Yeah, I every time I talk to Tony Simon for the Second Is for Everyone,
He's
um
great.
yeah, he's fantastic. Pound for pound, the largest gun buddy in America. That's my guy. I
Yeah,
just called him the other day to, see if he couldn't do a little call in for um, the Maj Toure show, and of course he was down. But
it's awesome.
every time I talk to him, he convicts me because he's like, man, there's a lot of people out there who want to talk about the war, this upcoming battle, this upcoming war, and really making gun owners look like crazy psychopaths. Um, there's enough that it looks like, oh, that's everyone. It's not.
Oh yeah,
But there's a lot of people out there who talk a big game, or even talk about like self defense scenarios in kind of this macho way. But how many people are willing to even send the email when the ATF does something stupid, or to even
yes,
email their senator like, oh, I don't want to be on a list, and then he'll say, homie, if you're not on a list by now, like, what are you doing?
you're doing something wrong,
Right. Like, you're
and
not
that's
on
the
a
crazy
list?
thing. Yeah, yeah. What do you? Where are you?
Yes, bro. I need you to put that in a t-shirt. I just need a supply, but you sell it. Like, I'm on a list, or
I'm on.
however you want to do it.
And that's the crazy thing, bro, is like it was a Saturday. This protest that we went to
Mm-hmm.
was advertised for 2 months, I think, on the CCDL, which is our Connecticut Citizens Defense League. Was on their page. I shared the shit out of it. It was a Saturday, slight overcast. I want to say it was maybe 60 degrees out, and we had 100 people show up out of the
Mm-hmm.
whole state of gun owners to protest against the abolition of our right to open carry and list of other things. And that to me is just like, it, if you're not going to put your money where your mouth is and show up for the issues that you actually believe in, then nothing ever is going to change. And it sucks because living in a blue state, our voices really don't matter for a ton anyway. The last bit of legislation, we had over 4,000 written testimonies in against the legislation. And I think the people in favor of it were under 500. So clearly that says something. And, they still pass it because there are elected representatives and whatnot. But yeah, it is, I'm all about getting out there and supporting things that you believe in, for sure. And even if there are people there you disagree with, if it's an issue you agree with, then screw it. Sorry, I didn't know if we were supposed to swear. I was gonna
And no,
let on.
I generally I don't really
All
try
right.
to, how do you say, censor my
Oh,
guests. I
okay.
don't think that's how do you say, productive. But
Fair,
hey,
fair.
guys, if you're over on the Twitter or the X, I let the stream on that side go a little bit too long. Sorry, it got an extended show. Make sure you hop over to um, youtube.com/ at costlypod and join us live, or catch the replay if for some reason you're not on the internet at this glorious hour. Sorry, buddies. So hop on over. I love you guys. Come on to the dark side. Bad Star Wars jokes. Unite.
Was I was like, maybe there's a reference I'm not getting, but yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
that's where my mind went.
Yep. So, the dark side. It's not because I'm black, I swear.
It sucks when nobody laughs, and I just wasn't sure if you were doing an outro to the live stream or something, so I wasn't going to talk.
Yeah, no, no, no. I technically was, but that's fine. Either way. So, shoot, where were we? We were talking about the legislature, and they went ahead and did what they wanted to do, anyways.
Yeah,
And it's crazy because you know what was really interesting that happened, and I've never quite. This is going to kind of get like kind of heavy. Um, when
do
the
it.
2020 election, what was it? I guess 2020 elections were happening, and there's a question in Arizona of like, oh, is the how do you say, are the votes being rigged, are they messing with the machines, all the different stuff that happened. And
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
here to tell anyone that it did or didn't happen. Yes, everything always looks a little bit sus every single year that it looks sus, so like don't get
It looks
excited
worse and
now.
worse. Like that's just the
Like
way it is. I
it
feel
really does.
like the media doesn't help. People don't help themselves. Yeah,
No, not at all. And my wife is big on like transparency and accountability, and I'm trying to like open my eyes to seeing these things like in the world at large. I'm just like, oh yeah, if these people would just be a little bit more just like open, life would be easier. Like we
but
would
then
not.
would you trust them if they said they were? That's the real
No,
problem. Is like, at this point, are we just past the point of no return where like,
nah. I think it's we're pretty far gone. We are pretty far gone. But point being is they actually showed up to the Arizona Capitol open carrying like ARs and such. Not like obviously they weren't intending on using them. At least that's none of the communications that I saw, or any of the messaging that I saw was like, we're going to go up there and bully our people into doing what we want them to do. Although somebody might perceive that, and I would understand if maybe they felt some type of way. Um,
yeah, for sure.
I I questioned I kind of like questioned the effectiveness of anything that we do, whether it's showing up like the BLM protests and things that kind of happened in that time where it's like, yo, like this guy got killed or this guy got gunned down, and we want to demonstrate, um, whether you believe in that cause or not, like the marching down the street. Does anyone take any of that seriously? We're laying in the street. Does anyone take that seriously? Where, in fact, the not effing around coalition was an all black militia. They marched literally armed to the teeth, marched down, big streets. Did
It's
anybody
where the
take it
KKK
seriously? Like,
was founded.
yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's
Well,
right.
and that's historic in a lot of ways, and it's like, wow, there's a lot of history in what we're even doing here. But does anyone take these demonstrations or standing up for what is right? Does that move the needle at
Yeah.
all? Like, I don't even know.
It's tough, man, because, I think everybody has, the right to free speech
Yeah.
and whatnot and to demonstrate. And I, I actually use a lot of the George Floyd protests as an example of, what you can accomplish and prevent specifically when you're armed versus when you're not. You look at these protests that happen when people were armed versus when they weren't. They weren't getting gassed and shot in the face with beanbags when
Yeah.
they could shoot back. But you know, truthfully, I don't know, because what was the big thing that whole summer was about police brutality and
Hmm.
Biden making all these promises that he was going to do police reform and whatnot and all this crazy stuff. And that was probably the single most destructive summer as far as protests went. That in my life. And
Yeah.
what really happened? Nothing really happened. I mean,
Right.
they certain states got rid of they had their police accountability bill where they got rid of qualified immunity and things like that, which I don't necessarily think was the right solution because it was misguided, but that's a whole other topic. Um, but not, yeah, in the grand scheme of things, what did happen? You look at the massively successful protest in Virginia when the VCDL organized their their protests where like 30,000 gun owners showed up and everyone was peaceful. Not a single fight broke out, not a single injury,
Mm,
shooting, anything like that. At the end of the day, they still passed the legislation.
mm,
So,
mm, mm, mm,
yeah,
mm,
it
mm.
really, and people were marching around with guillotines in the streets. It was, yeah, it really makes you think, does it really matter? Even on the other side of things, look at the amount of people the 1 million moms march or whatever, the people who are anti-gun.
Yep.
Does the needle really move far in their direction when right after they do that? You
No,
could
I
argue that, like,
wonder because they've made some gains. They really
but is that
have.
because of them or because of the people that we have in office? It's hard to
I
tell.
think it's a combination of the people we have in office and the big like dark money type guys,
Oh, well,
the
yeah.
Bloombergs of the world,
Bloomberg's and yeah.
because the lobbying, that's where the real there's like a phrase, but that's where the punch is,
Yeah.
like, hey,
That's
we're
that's
gonna.
the meat and potatoes right there.
Right, the meat and potatoes, like that's where it's at. So I'm concerned that the voice of the people is not only not heard, but it's like actively ignored. Like, oh, I didn't know. Like, oh, he's blocking my path to work. Oh, he's so annoying. These stupid protesters, and they don't.
Yeah.
Obviously, like I'm not for blocking, public roadways. I think the
Yeah,
FBI
yeah.
can really get after you if they really want to at that point. But the idea that it doesn't really matter. That's kind of, it's like blackpilling me in this conversation where I'm just like,
I know. I know. I know.
golly.
I try to stay hopeful, and
Yeah.
really the only thing that helps me with that is to get off the internet for periods of time, because the longer I spend on the internet, the angrier I get. But,
Hmm.
one of the things that I try to encourage and I try to promote is having rational conversations with people you disagree with
Yeah.
at times when it's appropriate, not when
Right.
you're out on the picket line screaming across the aisle and there's cops separating you two. But when
Right.
you're,
Because that's when the bear spray comes out.
yeah, yeah, exactly. That's when people start throwing shit and, shields come out and crazy shit. Like the U-Haul trucks show up. Um,
Yeah.
but people start
Like,
getting
oh, there's a
busted.
pallet of bricks. That's crazy.
Yeah,
Where'd
that's
this come
so
from?
weird. Where did that show up from? But that has got a family member they disagree, a friend they disagree with. I
Mm,
hope. And I've had some really successful conversations with people in the comments sections on these like Moms Demand Action, and we have the Newtown Action Alliance in Connecticut,
mm,
which is full of well-intentioned people who think they are doing the right thing. Is the way that I like to look at it,
yeah.
regardless of whether they're going about it the right way or not. A lot of these people are just parents who are like, yeah, I don't want my kids to die, and this is how I think. This is how I'm being told it's going to be accomplished. And they
Yeah.
believe people because, like you said, there's tons of money that goes into these propaganda campaigns that skew numbers and only show one side of the conversation, that convince them over time, like, hey, yeah, banning guns will definitely work, totally work, like it worked in countries like Mexico and Venezuela.
Oof, the
But
Venezuela. Don't talk about Venezuela. Come on, man. Like
but
that
that's
is the craziest situation. And then we go to like the worst case scenario, like Myanmar, or what's it
yeah,
called now? Or is it called Myanmar now? I can't remember.
yeah, yep.
And it's like, oh, now there's like a military coup,
They're
and
literally printing guns and fighting the junta over there, and
right.
and like,
Actually, I knew a
yeah,
guy who was interested in getting like printer kits sent over there, and I'm like, okay, I guess you can't stop the signal if we're going to talk about the printing,
yeah, yeah,
and like the human spirit is undefeated. Like you can, and that's I suppose the light at the end of the tunnel is no matter what happens at the end of the day, even if they ban every single gun in existence and subjugate all of America, like the craziest like worst case scenario type stuff,
yeah,
like the human spirit is undefeated and you really can't stop what we've started unless you just delete the whole thing. So they better
yeah.
hack into the code for the simulation that we all live in. Joking,
As
joking.
as Jeff Goldblum says, life finds a way.
Life finds a way. Yeah,
My
it really does.
Yeah, but best case scenario, we use what we have legislatively and try to avoid that at all
Yes,
costs. But
absolutely. At all costs. I've got kids. I don't really
peacefully,
enjoy the
and
idea
yeah,
of anything more than some strong words, a little bit of piss and vinegar. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
like
for sure.
let's keep it civil. We can work this out. I know, like early on in the founding of the country, as we were putting together legislatures, it wasn't always super civil. I think I may have talked about this before, but there was one bill that somebody submitted, and they were arguing back and forth, and some guy pulled out a cane and started beating another guy, and it's like, whoa, people get rowdy for things that they
Yeah,
actually care about. And I kind of
imagine
wish
that.
I kind of wish politicians still had that kind of gusto within them, like that, like, hey, I really do believe in this, like for real. I'm not just paid to kind of hold this position, or I'm holding this position so I can stay in a job type of thing. Like,
Yeah,
I really do care
so I can get
about.
rich.
Well, yeah, I mean, golly, money is the motivation, huh? Like,
That's
I
crazy, man.
really wish people, and like, I truly believe that most of them do not care. Like, I know there's like the AOCs of the world, and they can start to kind of do a thing, and then you start to hear about some of the hypocrisies, or oh, they funded this bill even though they said they weren't going to do it. Oh, okay. No one has a conscience. No one has morals. No one has a spine. No one's willing to do what must be done. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's tough, man, because I sometimes I wish life were as simple as a movie where you had a clear and defined antagonist, a
Hmm.
protagonist, and then like a solution at the end of it.
Yeah.
And I wish Liam Neeson wasn't a fucking flaming. Sorry, I don't know if I can say that. Just this guy, he hates guns in real life. Like
Oh yeah,
I
he's
wish
he's
we
a
had a
fighter,
Liam
but he hates
Neeson,
guns. Like, what
dude.
the
I
heck?
don't. It's what a disappointment. Him and Ron Swanson. What's his name? The guy who
Oh my
plays him
gosh, what's
from
his
Parks
name?
and Rec.
He's anti-gun, right?
He's super super liberal. Yeah,
That's crazy. That is a
yeah, I know. And he
crazy.
plays he plays like a extreme libertarian in Parks and Rec. But yeah, he hates guns. He's it's sad. But him and also the guy from The Office,
Hmm.
assistant to the assistant manager. But anyway,
Oh, what's
I
his name?
digress.
So Nick Offerman is anti-gun.
Yes,
That
yes,
hurts my heart.
I know,
Oh,
I know. It's
disgusting.
depressing. We lost another one, but well, we never had him technically, but
Yeah.
um, but yeah, no, I totally empathize with you. Like at the time of that protest in Virginia when they were marching around with guillotines, I was like, hell yeah, that's awesome. Like, this is the message we have to send. And then as I had time to reflect on it, I was like you said, that still didn't do anything.
Hmm.
I I feel like we are frogs in a boil in a pot of water slowly being brought up to a boil. Where, the analogy is if you boil water and drop a frog in it, it'll jump out. But if
Hmm.
you put a frog in a pot of water and slowly bring it up to a boil, it'll sit there and boil to death because it doesn't
Mm.
realize that it's happening. And, wars were fought for way less in our history,
Yeah.
especially like you said, when we had just fought for our independence. We had done this, we had hashed all this out, and we were like, this is the way things are going to go from now on. And because people died for it. I don't know if we ever got to that point again, if we would know that we were there, because we have so many comforts and we have so many things that matter to us now. Where
Hmm.
back in the day, it was like you farmed, you got food, you ate, you took care of your family, and that was pretty much it.
Well, I
I'm
mean, if
probably
you screwed that
oversimplifying
up,
that.
I mean, yes and no, but like if somebody interrupted even one little facet of the supply line, an entire
Yeah,
town is going to die over this winter. Like
yeah,
everyone's going to die. You're going to come back and find like two people left. And it's like, whoa, like you got to fight that war. Like this is life and
yeah,
death,
for
buddy.
sure.
This
This
is
is the
life and
stuff that
death.
sends me over the edge, is like that we still have that. Like, people don't realize your supermarket only has enough food in it for 3 days, roughly 3 days. But at
Hmm.
least back then, people had the skills to acquire more necessities, things that they
Hmm.
needed. Now, we're soft. We don't
Screwed.
know how to do that stuff for the most part. But
No,
anyway,
and it's funny because I know let's get back to it, but it's funny because actually one of my friends who's kind of like a Southern Belle type, she's like, "These city girls don't know how to can. Like this is crazy. Y'all have no garden. This is crazy." And I'm like, "Yeah, none of us have a garden. I'm so sorry." Well,
yeah,
during COVID, somebody had a garden. But really quick, Kids Safe Foundation. I don't know if you know him, but great dude, great organization trying to help the kids out, and I believe is he out of Oregon? Tell me if I'm wrong, buddy. And really fighting the good fight. You guys go support him. DJ Play Nice moderator. If you could please post up his link so people can go support what he's doing. Much love to that brother.
awesome.
Yeah.
I've
Back
definitely
to
heard
the
of them.
show. Yeah, he's doing great work. Back to the show. I am very concerned. Um, Only when I think about it, because I try not to think about it. I try not to think about things that are
Think happy
stressful.
thoughts. Yeah,
Happy thoughts, because when I get stressed, I'm like not fun. But people say I'm like super chill. I'm like, yeah, I guess I'm trying to be.
you're like a duck. You're calm on the outside and legs going
Right,
like crazy underneath the water.
insanity.
Yeah,
And but we're like you said, we're like 3 days away from kind of losing it all. And there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff happening, such as like, oh yeah, there's issues that we have with China. I mean, the president of China was just here in
I saw that.
Sacramento, and was it San Fran?
I think
Either way,
I don't know.
either way, he was in California, aka California, for those who can appreciate that joke. Um, and the streets were lined with the Chinese flag, and he was there, and oh man, it was kind of a sight to see. But that
Yeah,
wasn't even the exciting point, because that's like, okay, whatever. The exciting part was the subways were clean, the streets were clean. There was nobody living on this in tents. There was no pee
really.
anywhere. Like they cleaned that joint up. It was spick and span for the president of China, not
So they essentially
because.
did what we did, what they do for us when we go over there.
Mhm, exactly.
Probably gave
Which
them a
is,
very guided tour.
yeah, and it's embarrassing because like there's real people suffering from drug addiction, from mental health disorders, and there's people who are just trying to live their life who are running into people who are not well, like they're not okay. And now we're having these conflicts between people who should be able to get some help, who should be able to have access to some sort of mental health care. Um, and then we're having like borderline self-defense scenarios happening where it's like, whoa, this guy literally just jumped out of nowhere and shoved this lady into traffic, or just randomly started beating somebody. It's like, well, so it took the president of China coming over and we're just trying to like basically. You ever when you were a kid, I'm not going to ask you about your adult life. When you were a kid, did you ever like clean up your room for your mom's by just like grabbing all the
Shoving
stuff and
everything under the
shoving
bed.
under the bed? Or like, oh, there's
Well,
a
that's
dust
the thing.
pile under the
Yeah,
carpet.
they just shoved all the homeless people under the bed, metaphorically. Like that, they
And
didn't fix
it's
the
not even a
problem.
metaphor. They're
Yeah.
literally under a
Yes.
bed somewhere. Like,
Yeah.
like what the heck?
Or, something.
Well, I'm
The
actually
shelters
concerned
magically
for
have
their health and
more.
safety. I'm like, where did they put these guys?
Of course, of course. My sister lives in Oakland, man, and,
Yeah.
she loves it out there because that's where her job is and that's where her friends are, but I'll be on the phone with her at night when she's coming home from work, and, the noises I hear in the background sometimes make me concerned for her, and
Mm,
she swears it's just normal. It's like just people yelling. It's how it normally is, but she's gotten like followed by people before. She's had people with clear mental health issues
hmm.
try to talk to her, and which shouldn't be scary by itself, but when you don't know what somebody's intentions are, and you're 98 pounds soaking wet girl, that it can be scary. It is scary.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
so yeah, it sucks, man, and that's why I don't know if we're segueing into dangerous waters here, but I try to bring this up with in regards to mental health care. Whenever there's a mass shooting, I feel like it is kind of a scapegoat. A lot of people, a lot of our peers say, "Oh, well, it's not a gun problem, it's a mental health problem."
Mm,
But then in the same breath will refuse to fund programs or to support the funding of programs that would expand healthcare to people who can't afford it. And
yeah.
it's one of those things that it's like you can't have your cake and eat it too.
Hmm.
If you're going to say that it's a mental health problem, then it makes sense for you to support programs that are going to help people with mental health issues. The problem is the people who want to support the politicians who want to support those programs are anti-gun,
Hmm.
typically. So we run
Absolutely.
into this problem. Yeah, we run into this problem where, we can't vote for people who really represent us, and we have to pick one polarized side or the other, and it's a shame.
Yeah, it turns people who would generally be nuanced and have kind of a diversity in thought and opinion into single issue voters when really we don't want to
Yeah,
be. I don't know. We talked.
nobody
You
wants to
mentioned like
be.
ranked choice voting and whatnot, and that could be really, really helpful, especially when we're talking about like presidents and such. Like, I would love to vote for a third party person, like love, love, love to, and then
Can you
you
imagine
realize
not
like,
thinking
ooh,
you're wasting a vote or something or whatever
yeah,
people
like
say?
whatever the mentality is, that
Yeah,
would be fantastic to know. Like at the very least, the vote's going somewhere, not to the guy who's getting 2% of the vote, because 2%
exactly.
is nothing. That is
No,
horrible.
it's embarrassing.
It really is. But shoot, and I've interviewed Larry Sharp, who's run for um, VP and governor of New York and things like that, and I've tried to get a little bit of information on why they keep trying, like why the Libertarian Party, why Green Party, and other third parties they keep trying. And it's like, okay, we got to get ballot access. We got to get somebody on the freaking like a
Debates.
legislature.
Oh,
Like
yeah,
we got to get on the debate stage. And it's like chipping away. So maybe in 100 years we have a
yeah.
presence. But you can't get it overnight unless there's some sort of like fireworks worthy um, canon event that really no one
Change.
could have. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think we have the RFKs of the world, and even um, uh, shoot, who's the other guy? I think RFK probably has the best shot of having any sort of momentum. Excuse me. Wow, I'm like super stuffy all of a sudden. But even still, I think he's like a little bit more on the down low. Not like gay, but like anti-gun. Um, for
Yeah,
for those who need clarification, I think he's like secretly anti-gun, even though he says he won't bother the guns.
a
That
lot
could
of people are
change.
like that, unfortunately. They're
Hmm.
where it's not like a hot button issue, and they just kinda put it under the it's like, how Biden and Kamala said, "No, we support the Second Amendment," and there's always a "but" after it.
Sure, you do.
It's never just a period, and, yeah, no, we support it.
Second Amendment, if it's just a double barrel shotgun, I love that song. For those
For
of you
sure.
who don't know, there's a song out there where they like clip him saying "get a double barrel shotgun." It's my favorite song in the world, and they
Fire it into the air.
just fire to blast into the air. Get a
I think I've seen
shotgun.
that.
I'm a terrible singer, so I'm sorry, guys.
That's
I'm
okay, it
wondering
was
your
fantastic.
experience. Um, Either way, yeah, it's kind of a crazy situation that we're all in, and I wish we could, I guess, have a little bit of hope. For those of you who are watching or listening live, I see a few of you are in the audience. If you guys could just hit like on the stream, that'd be really helpful if you're listening. Just turn the screen on, just hit like, and then hit share over to your Instagram. Take a screenshot, let people know what you're doing, and do that. That would be fantastic. Much love to you guys. Um, Jordan, we've been going on for a hot minute. Is there anything that you, first of all, on this subject that you just really have to say before we transition?
Oh, not really, man. It's I mean, you
Okay.
know, I can find myself rambling about this stuff for forever, and it's one of those things that, it's I shared a post today about this concept that is defined in the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows.
Hmm.
This guy essentially just wrote a book and made all these words for like feelings that we have that we don't have words for. And
Mm.
this one, I think I'm going to butcher it, but it's like botulism. And it's the realization. I know it almost sounds like botulism, but
I'm like botulism. No, you said botulism, didn't you?
botulism, yeah. It's
Mm.
the realization that our perspective, it's the realization of how limited our perspective is, and how in the grand scheme of things we absolutely we know nothing. And it's what we do know and what we think we know is so insignificant compared to like the larger picture. And
Hmm.
it's something that I kind of harp on, is like, when you feel very passionate about something, um, every once in a while take a step back and try to reanalyze yourself, and
Hmm.
figure out if you're closing yourself off unintentionally to new information when it conflicts with your beliefs. And that's kind of like
Yeah.
where where I come at with this. And I think that that was related to what we were talking about, but
I think in a way, and now I find myself kind of doing the same thing, even with the gun issue. Like I question, like, okay, so I consider myself to be like purely pro Second Amendment, like pro freedom, pro Second Amendment. Anything else, everything else comes afterwards. Obviously, for those of you who listened for a long time, know that I'm a man of faith. I'm a Christian. Those values come before really anything else. But I find that they don't conflict, even with this conversation that we're having now, which is, let's
yeah,
say, open the conversation up, let people train with you. Don't treat people like dirt, or make people feel like less than. Like my Christian values support what you're doing entirely.
that's
I
dope.
believe so. But other than that, I'm like, okay, with the gun issues, can we like look at the issue and ask ourselves like, what compromise would make us actually safer? I haven't found any. I'm open to the answer. I'm open
Yeah,
to an answer that I'm uncomfortable with. If there's actually an answer supported by data, supported by like real life um, experience, is there a way to actually make people safer? I'm here for it. Some people might not like it. I'm sure we're going to lose somebody, today who'd be like, "Well, you're not 100% pro." Yes, I'm 100% pro gun, but I'm looking for an answer to actually help us, not to just say I'm in this group, and because I'm in this group, I feel good about myself. Like that doesn't help the situation.
yeah,
Um, so I feel like I'm doing myself a service by staying like open minded to like, can we actually find solutions that help real people, my family, your family. You know what I mean?
yeah, for sure. It's good to do that, man. It's, I used to be, just like quick anecdote, I used to be vehemently against the idea of, when Obamacare rolled out.
Hmm.
I was like, well, clearly it's going to be a failure. And I heard tons of
Mm.
stories of it being a failure. Um, and I started dating my now wife and found out that her mom, who was a breast cancer survivor, had a double mastectomy, uh, was quoted at like almost 3 grand a month for health insurance, and then applied to Obamacare and was paying $300 a month, and was actually able to afford health insurance because she had a pre-existing condition and it benefited her. And I was like, all right, well, if it worked for her, there's got to be at least one other person it works for, and it might not work for everybody, and it might be a complete clusterfuck. But I clearly did not have all the information and clearly didn't know everything there was to know about this, because it is helping someone. And I really try to use that perspective when talking about anything else, and that's gun things. That's why, like, when I'm talking to people who are anti-gun, I'm not talking at them. I'm trying to speak with them and hear
Yeah.
their complaints and their voice also, because who knows, I might learn something. And even if I can empathize with somebody, it's better than just treating them like they're subhuman and calling them an idiot because they say clip instead of magazine.
Oh. But
As much as we
I
hate
get
it.
the temptation. I get the temptation.
I
um,
know, it's tough sometimes.
it's so rough. Guys, for those of you who are watching live, fire in a few questions because I want to make sure we can ask at least one or two good questions to our guests as we're transitioning into the final part of the show. We have approximately um, 35 minutes left, but we can cut it short if it gets boring. I don't mind. Or if it gets real crazy, technically I have 2 hours to do this. So if you look at the invite, it's in there. That said, you tell me if you just have to go. Either way, I'm happy that we're having this conversation. Though
Oh, I'm good.
let's jump to the conversation that I really did want to have, or I did want to have, where you were talking about the issue that we're having with the healthcare versus quote unquote gun violence or violence that happens to
Violence
utilize
with
guns.
guns, yeah.
Yeah, which is such a, I hate having to dance around the terms, but I hate how much these terms are weaponized against us. So it almost like
100%.
convinced me where it's like, oh, we have to make sure that we're not just feeding into this like um this loop of insanity. But kind of going back to what we're supposed to be talking about. I know I'm like falling apart.
Oh, I feel that, man.
The there's politicians and I guess the right leaning political um I guess stance that everyone should take care of themselves. We need to, if you want healthcare, get your money up, get your bread together, go buy it. Pay for your doctor's visit or pay for your insurance, even though insurance is the biggest scam in the world.
Oh, yeah.
Legalized. It's a crazy scam. Hey, pay me so that when you need to use a service, you can pay to use a service, and then maybe it'll cost less, but it actually costs way more because we have an agreement with the people that you have to pay that we're going to charge that we're going to all like pay
Them
each other way
significantly
more,
more.
way
Yeah,
more. But
way
if you
more.
didn't use my service, you could actually pay a lot less. Wow.
Yeah. I didn't know that there was a huge market for people in America to buy medication from Mexico.
Yeah, and surgery. Oh
Like,
my gosh.
yes, and surgery, yeah. It's
Yes.
nuts because you can get it for like a tenth of the price
Hmm.
over the like it's nuts.
And part of that is like I suppose the issue with the free market, and people are going to think I'm a communist for saying that. Totally capitalist, guys. Very much a
Yeah, for
capitalist.
sure, for sure.
But
It sucks that you even have to preface that, but I know people and
right,
people
they're
are
going to get
yeah.
tight. They'll be like, "What? Where's this conversation going?" Definitely capitalist. But there's this idea that region lock pricing, because you can't charge everyone the same thing for a product if the market in the U.S. is much higher, and then the market in like Uganda is like much lower. Or I say Uganda, it might be higher. You know, just say
You're not a finance expert of the you're not an expert on the economics of the country of Uganda. That's okay.
right, definitely not. But who knows? But kind of getting back to what we're trying to talk about, the issue that we're running into with okay, gun issue happens. Somebody kicks in the door of a school and harms innocent little babies, children. The most precious lives in America, in my view. I'm sure most
Yeah,
people
for
agree.
sure.
I'm sure most people agree. And we're like, he was disturbed. I'm like, I think he was possessed, but he probably was disturbed. He probably was disturbed. I'm not sure.
Maybe a little column A, a little column B.
A little bit of both, a little bit of both. And it's like, well, if only he could have got mental health help. How much is it to go see a therapist? Well, when me and my wife were, getting premarital, I think it cost us like $60. And then when I decided I wanted to go get some sessions for my own self, it could cost me up to like $75 for a guy who's inexperienced. I know when me
Damn.
and my wife went together, it could cost us like $120 for an hour. So if
Yeah.
somebody needs to go every single day because they are not right, how much is that going to cost them to get an hour or two? You know?
And how realistic is that if the person is working minimum wage job and,
Oh,
or even getting
this.
state benefits, man, like
Uh huh.
when I was doing therapy, I was paying $100 a month to go once every, I was paying $50 a session.
Mm-hmm.
No, was it, or was I getting charged 100? Anyway, it's either $100 or $150 a month. And, I'm lucky enough that's after insurance also.
Mm-hmm.
That's my insurance was paying for it. And
My insurance
that's
never
what I
covered a
owed.
thing. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that's the thing, man. The difference is all across the board, and, you've got people who are essentially ostracized from society who are allowed to kinda, like, fester and
Hmm.
find people who agree with them in online chat rooms, that I don't think are the problem, but the fact that
Hmm.
people are, because you can have chat rooms about anything, but,
Right. But
um
Telegram is wild. Like,
yeah, well, Telegram's nuts, man. It's
yeah.
yeah, I follow a lot of these, like, war pages but anyway, yeah, you could find whatever you're looking for is my point. And, like,
Yeah.
you can find somebody on, www.iamright.com who's
Hmm.
gonna be like, "Yeah, kids suck," and, that they're or at least, like, I don't think any of these people who go crazy and end up shooting up schools don't like kids. They're obviously
Hmm.
disturbed for another reason, and
Hmm.
they're doing it because it's easy and they're
Hmm.
bad. They're horrible people, But I look at Adam Lanza, like we had here in Connecticut, the Newtown, the Sandy Hook shooting.
Wow.
There were so many red flags with this kid. He was on. He was known by law enforcement as being a kid that had problems. Like, there were
Hmm.
so many chances for this kid to get the help that he needed,
Yeah.
and it was just let to fester and turn into what it did. And
Hmm.
I don't think that we need to have like intervention programs necessarily, because I'm vehemently against red flag laws, but
Yeah.
I think if you say, "Hey, this kid's an issue, and this is my reason for believing that, and I'm close with this person, and I know," then for certain people, there needs to be help available, whether it be, I get all bottled up with this because I'm like, well, do you want involuntary programs out there? Do you want
Right.
people
And
to come and
I'm
kidnap
very
your
much
kid in the
pro
middle of
freedom. And
Yes,
so
and
the
it
idea that, oh,
conflicts with that.
like I have kids, so if like one of my kids was like kind of just joking around or being kind of ditzy, or maybe they're having a rough patch, and it's like, oh, this patch is rough enough according to this one teacher who is bonkers. There's a lot of bonkers teachers out there, and now we're just gonna, file the right paperwork that now my kid's gone
Yeah,
because they're
you don't
kind of having
know.
a
I
rough
mean,
a rough time, you know.
yeah. I don't the way that I look at it is like, I think social programs that would afford somebody to get the help that they need
Hmm.
are better off being, because the problem is, people accuse large swaths of the population of taking advantage of social services, whether
Yeah.
that be food stamps, whether that be income. I
I
find
think the
more
black
times.
community gets that worse than anybody else.
Oh, I'm sure, absolutely, absolutely.
Oh my
Any,
gosh.
people living in the inner city, especially black people, how many fortunate white people look at somebody, whether it's a single parent or just somebody, trying to make a living, and say, well, that person's on state aid because they're lazy, and it's
They call them
unfortunately, it's,
welfare queens, and
yeah, seated
unfortunately,
in
like you were about
racism,
to
and
say, it's like that's has nothing to do with it. This person was literally put in a really, really, really bad spot, and some people
100%.
clearly they need to get it together. Like let's
Yeah,
be honest, but
it's a spectrum, believe it or not.
mhm. It definitely is. So
But I'm of the mindset that a program is better off being broad enough so that you have people who can take advantage of it and abuse it, but
mhm.
everybody who needs it gets it, than having a program that is too restrictive to where there is less fraud and abuse, but
Yeah.
people on the outskirts who are not as able to get access to it or whatever, are missing out. And I would
Mm.
never advocate for something like a government intervention program or anything like
Ooh.
that, but I think that it should
Yeah,
be
it's
weight.
rife with issues.
Yeah, 100%. The government can't get their shit together on, like, the most basic level. I would never want
Yeah.
them having
I mean, you would
control
think
over
that
what my
the
kid does.
military industrial complex would kind of, be buttoned up. So like, yeah, let's buy our bombs, let's do this, let's do that, let's drop some bombs, let's do this, let's do that. And then you go and you're like, so how much money did the Pentagon spend last year? We don't know.
Yeah,
How many years has it been like that?
we
6.
lost X amount of yeah, yeah, I know. But, that's
Cool.
that's kind of where I'm at with stuff like that, what the solution is, because I'm not an expert in that field, but we need something that is accessible to anyone who needs it.
Hmm.
Um, with mental health care specifically. I mean, even healthcare in general, but it is not something that's going to be forced on people either.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I personally, I'm not sure what the answer is because I'm like, well, we live in a capitalist society. We have 501c3s. We could easily build a few to kind of offer us the services. And I'm sure there are so many, nonprofits that offer services and some that are doing quite well.
Hmm.
But there are some, especially the guys that my guy, our moderator for today, DJ Play Nice. Thank you so much for your hard work, buddy. Like, Walk the Talk America. Um, the they're doing great work in the 2A community, trying to make sure that they can offer, safe, anonymous for those who are concerned, mental health screening, so that you can seek care, by your own free will, so you don't have to, kind of go through some of the issues that can potentially happen if you don't take care of your mentals. But guess what? Like, I know for a fact, and this isn't a secret, all of these organizations are starving. Like, they are struggling to kind of hit their goals when it comes to fundraising.
I'm sure.
And it's embarrassing because the 2A community is, I'll put it this way. My guy, I was talking to one of the show sponsors, Obsidian Tactics, and we were talking about like analytics and demographics and whatnot of Google searching traffic and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, so some of the customers that we have, a large percentage, and I think I can say this without issues, is a certain age group, with disposable income. To
Yeah.
me, that means if you have disposable income to go buy a pair of Nods, which you can't buy a pair of night vision goggles under $4,000 without getting laughed out of whatever shooting range that you're in.
Yeah.
So I
Then
think
maybe
maybe you could
contribute to some of these organizations that are
you could
needing.
throw $100 a year to some of these organizations that are
Yeah.
actually doing the work. You know what I mean? Like
$10 a
$100 a
month,
year.
recurring payment, recurring
Yes.
monthly, whatever,
Yes. Or this is like the gangster move, and I've personally done this not for 2A organizations, but for youth organizations in my city. $100 a month. That's a lot. Like, there are some months I'm just
That's
like, ooh,
awesome though.
should I? Oh, and it sounds like I'm bragging. I'm really not, because there's some months where I'm just like, I could use that $100. Like,
Yeah,
I really
for
could.
sure.
But like for me, like if there are certain things that I have to do personally in my personal life, such as like tithing, such as helping out in the city, doing different things. I can't donate my time like I once did, so I need to be involved some way somehow.
Yeah.
If you find that you're not, literally banging on the doors of your legislature, like you need to. If you have that disposable income that we're talking about, I'm not talking about if you've been struggling to buy ammo. Like if you're struggling to buy ammo, okay, like I get it. $1 a month, but
Something.
like let's get in there. Let's like this
Yeah.
is start a podcast and bring all these people on and share the news. Like share
Yeah.
their pages. Share their pages. Like, do you have 100 people that follow you on socials? Share it. Like even what you're doing. Like you're
That's
you're in the
huge, man.
streets. Like you're doing good work. You're trying to make sure that the conversation's bigger than just us. I mean, I'm looking at was it 2 years ago, maybe three? We had an issue where was it Recoil magazine brought on Top Shot Chris, who's an openly gay man, Asian
Yeah.
dude, one of the baddest shooters in the world. Like, don't mess
We
with
had
that
him on
guy.
our show too.
Yeah, I wish I could have him on my show. I'm so jealous. So
He was really
Top,
receptive. He was super cool about it.
yeah, well, I bet everyone I know says he's like stellar dude,
He was
and
very nice.
he was humiliated. Not, I don't know if he took it personally. I didn't listen to the episode to see if you guys talked about that, but he was completely disrespected by many. I mean, obviously the internet's full of trolls, so it's like, what is the actual consensus of people? But way too
Yeah.
many people with a voice. Lucas Bach, excuse me.
Oh
Way
man,
too
don't
many
get me
people with
started.
with a real voice, with
Yeah.
influence. Just straight up like disgust.
Bro, that Instagram post that Recoil had, I remember it had like 30,000 comments on it
Yeah.
with his cover shot of the
Mm-hmm.
cover of Recoil magazine. Had like
30,000 comments.
30,000
Oh my
comments.
god.
It was some crazy number like that.
Oh my god.
And yeah, there were a ton of negative ones that were like, "Oh, this is woke. This is like buzzword after buzzword after buzzword. Like, this is just appealing to XYZ population. And I'm like, dude, the guy won Top Shot. He was a regular dude. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he's against these like cops and military special forces dudes. He was a regular dude and he won
Mm-hmm.
Top Shot. Like, that by itself is crazy huge. He also happens to be openly gay, and I think that is extremely important also, like on a separate note. And I
Sure.
think it's important enough to make it into like a highlighting feature of his cover, especially one that if he's passionate about it.
Right.
You know,
I mean,
there's
he chose his outfit. People are like, "Oh, they put that
yeah,
on him." No, he chose it.
good for him.
They're not pandering, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Dude,
So
and that's, selfishly, I don't know if it's selfish, but I guess selfishly, if my end goal is to get more people into guns so they
yeah,
vote pro gun, and we get more nuanced politicians who are pro gun and also
yes,
pro all the other things that people care about.
bro.
But that's huge for groups like mine who are trying to show people that not every gun owner is the orange cap wearing, homophobic
Right.
FUD that they see at the range that, is whatever, believes in XYZ that this person hates.
Yeah.
It's huge. And that's the truth, is that there were tons of people out there like that. And it just
Yeah.
happens to be that one of them ended up on a magazine finally.
Right. And I talk about it because not because I'm like, oh, I love Chris. He's my hero. I don't know Chris, but I think he's, from what I've heard, good dude, extremely talented, and
Yeah, obviously.
he's doing stuff that most people are not willing to do, such as actually going and speaking to his local bodies and
Yeah.
assemblies to make it happen. So like, shout out to Chris, shout out to what he's doing. I'm embarrassed that we had that response. Beyond that, I think it's really, really important that when the anti-gun gunners, whether they're Democrats or closet Republicans, when I say closet, like rhino types,
Yeah.
whatever is it? I keep using this word closet, and it's like that's not
Yeah.
the way we use closet.
Take the guns first, due process second.
Right? Oh,
Yeah.
I'm about to lose like 6 followers.
It's
Thanks,
gonna,
bro.
hey, I said it, you didn't.
Right, but here's the crazy thing, right? Like he's out there making moves, and we need to make sure that we support people who are making moves. And if we can show the world that the gun world is not specifically one thing, like that's why I think what we do here is powerful, is because
Absolutely.
in addition to having cool guys like yourself who are lily white on the show, we have a lot of awesome black people in this space who are doing the thing. It's like
Yeah, that's awesome.
it's not just one thing, it's many things, and we are many, which sounds demonic, but like we're everywhere.
We
We're
are
everywhere.
legion.
We're legion. No, like, but seriously, like we're not
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
not going away. If you go lock up every person who looks like a FUD, guess what? You didn't even get 25% of us. Like,
No.
you didn't. You're like, oh, some of these guys and girls are shooting revolvers, but some of them are shooting like what was the new thing that Sig just dropped? The Spear LT.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And there's some guy out there who's got a rainbow plate carrier, who's got a Spear LT, shooting 7.62 because Russian rounds, and
Yeah. Yes.
who's got
762
homemade
by
night vision
39R.
because money, and
Yeah.
and I
3D
wouldn't
printing
mess with
game
him.
is nuts.
It's nasty. It's so
Yeah,
crazy. So it's just I'm just putting it out there, guys. Like, let's do our
for
part
sure.
and make sure that we're not pushing people away. And I'm not saying that you got to go like invite people into your shooting club that maybe you're not, you just don't know how to be, around. Like, I get it,
Yeah.
but don't be a tool. Like, I'm just gonna say it like that. you know?
Listen, if you could sum it up in a couple words, that's it.
Yeah. So really quick, just want to say, guys, if you are watching the show, listening, make sure that you are supporting our show sponsors like Obsidian Tactics. It's always in the links. It's always in the bio. It's in all the things. Obsidian Tactics. Use code Armed Atlas this holiday season and get free shipping on your entire order. Why free shipping instead of like 10%? Because sometimes you just want to buy one thing and you realize, oh shoot, this thing is like $30 and shipping is $10. And now we're paying $10 for some. I could get it from Amazon. Well, no, free shipping is here. ObsidianTactics.com. Free shipping. Use code Armed Atlas. It's here. It's ready. Come on, guys. Let's get it. So, really quick, bro.
I love Obsidian Tactics, by the way. I didn't realize they were one of your sponsors.
Yes, Randy, that's my guy. He actually recommended you. Like,
Oh, really?
this is the only reason this conversation's happening.
Oh, that's
So,
awesome.
yeah,
I gotta reach out to him then. Yeah, he's a cool
yeah,
dude.
yeah. He was just like, I was like, man, I need to get some more guests on. I'm like, and he's like, well, have you seen Better Way to Way? I mean, they're pretty cool. They're pretty cool. And I was like, oh yeah, and
That's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah, he's one of the first pages I followed, like one of the first bigger pages I followed that I was like, oh, this dude's doing good things.
yeah, really is. Love what they're doing over there. And real quick before we wrap up, because we're at a point where we got like 15 minutes left in the show. If you guys have questions, go ahead and fire them in. And yeah, I see some of the conversation about Top Shot Chris and how self-taught he is, and even the organization that he started. He's a founding member of the Asian Pacific American Gun Owners Association. That's awesome. I got to get one of those guys on this show.
Yeah.
But is there anything that you like, Jordan? Is there anything that you wish you could talk about that is not really kind of in the niche that like, okay, we're talking about gun owners, we're talking about gun ownership, things like that. Is there something like you wish you could talk about more? Maybe there's something that you wish I would ask you that I haven't asked you yet.
It is. I think a lot of the stuff that I do now, because my life has become consumed with a better way to a. It's more than just. It's like a second full-time job for me, but it's also something that I get a lot of fulfillment out of. So it ends up
Mm-hmm.
kind of being all-encompassing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think something that we could all learn from that I really wish people talked about more, especially when it came to guns in our community, but politics in general, or kind of we hit on it earlier, was just like being a decent person in general, trying whether your morals come from religion or life experience or anything, trying to use that in a way that makes you a better person to the people around you. And
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to this stuff, especially people you disagree with, people that like you look at as not your equal, because there's a ton of that out there. And I think that it's one of those things that we could all use a little more humility and realize that we don't know everything. We don't have the whole situation. I use this as like a litmus test, and I've done this for a while. Whenever I believe something, my grandfather was a teacher until he was 90 years old. He was a World
Wow.
War II vet, was in Normandy, served for 2 years overseas, and came back, started teaching, taught until he was 90 years old in the inner city in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Loved his job. And he said one day to me, I don't even remember what I was arguing about, but I was a little shithead kid, and I had some view that I was super passionate about. And he said, okay, well, what about the other side? And I asked him, like, what did he mean? He's like, argue against what you just said for the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And when I asked about it, he said, if you can't argue effectively against your belief, then you don't have all the information, and you're ignorant to the other side, and you don't deserve your opinion. And at the time I was like, all right, whatever. Like, that doesn't mean anything to me right now. But I've used that as kind of a litmus test whenever I've gone through and really became passionate about something, like I am with guns, like I am with, free speech, things like that. And um, tried to empathize with people who disagree with me, especially the ones who are like angry about it. Because I find that those people are the easiest ones to push aside and dehumanize. I really think we need to do a better job of realizing that, like, the person who's yelling at us is doing so because they're not being able to effectively communicate their ideas, either because we're not letting them, because they don't feel safe, they don't feel heard. And just kind of take a step back and genuinely you know try to learn about what that person believes. from both sides of the argument, of the political spectrum, dehumanizing the other people. People on the left calling people on the right Nazis because somebody in the group has a Trump flag, and now everyone standing around that person is a Nazi. And that's a heavy word. Like that word carries a lot of weight, and I don't
Yeah.
think people realize that. And
It's abused.
people, it's crazy. It's crazy abused. And people on the right saying, like Pinochet did nothing wrong, and throwing, if you believe in XYZ, then you're a communist, and communists aren't people, and they deserve to get thrown out of helicopters. Well, now like everyone, same thing. Everyone around this group of people is that person is dehumanized to the point of like we can either justify or um, stand by while bad things are done to that group of people. Um, so that's I really wish we talked about that more. Not that you didn't, I don't wish that you asked it, and you're a bad host for not asking that. But that's one thing that I feel like just transcends politics, transcends the gun community. Is really just like makes you a better person, makes you a more humble person when you realize that like maybe you don't know everything that
Yeah.
you think you do, and it could benefit you to listen to somebody who you disagree with. Like that
Yeah.
whole, the thing with the Obamacare that I was talking about. Harm reduction is like a thing that I was, my mom, so my mom is an alcoholic. She's been sober for 11 years now,
Oh wow,
thankfully.
that's awesome.
Um, dude, I used to like when I was an angsty teenager, I went and lived with my dad because I was like, this piece of shit is, choosing this and choosing alcohol over her family and all
Yeah.
that stuff. And you know, I didn't realize that it was like I didn't have the perspective that she, didn't have that the capability at the time to get better until again I started dating my wife, and same thing with her dad. And even then I was like, yeah, your dad's kind of a piece of shit for what he's doing. And then realizing, like, dude, there's no way somebody chooses the things that he's choosing over his family. And the way
Right.
like what my mom did, like my mom didn't choose to lose her house, because she
Yeah.
would rather have a drink. And coming to that realization after talking to alcoholics and talking to people who are former drug addicts, that like, it really opened my eyes to the possibility, whether I believed it or not, that maybe it's more akin to a mental illness or a disease, as they call it, than it is just them choosing to be a dirtbag.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things, like just a couple examples of things that I believed one thing one day, and over the course of a couple of years believe something completely differently now. And um, I don't think it's necessarily compromising your values to listen to people you disagree with. I think it's something that can give you a perspective you didn't know was out there.
I love that. I think that's super important, and I wish more people would. In the world of like debate, and there's like a whole online scene with the debate bros, and I'm sure you've run into a few of them.
Yeah.
It's being able to steel man an opponent's argument. I think is so important beyond just like the ability to be like tear apart their argument through understanding it better, to be able to empathize with that human being on the other side of the discussion, argument, heated debate, whatever it is, and say like, hey, technically, like I still believe what I believe, but if I were to understand this can lead to this potentially and these things, and I personally still believe that you should try to do these things, and people in society needs to improve in this way, but like I understand, you know, or to
Yeah.
try to understand,
Yeah.
I think would help a lot. Like it would help a lot. So
Dude, it's yeah. I do think that I don't think necessarily on the top end of the organization, but I think I look at Moms Demand Action, like Shannon Watts is an asshole. I think
mhm.
she totally knows what she's doing, but I definitely think a lot of like the foot soldiers who show up in orange shirts and hold signs up outside of like legislative buildings truly think that they're doing good. And I just
Doing the
think that
Lord's
they're
work. Mm.
kind of, yeah, I just think that they're, might just not have all the information.
Yeah.
So
So let's transition to let's there's like two questions from the audience that I would love to go ahead and take.
sweet.
Um or at least there's at least one that I think would be good for what we're doing here.
One
Let's
good one,
and
one garbage one.
Stop. All the
No,
questions are
I'm
good.
kidding.
But here's a question. Jordan, it's from DJ Play Nice. Jordan, if we want to support your
Oh, cool.
organization or its general mission, how would you advise us to best invest our next 5 minutes, 5 days, and $5?
I love that question. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Um, Man, 5 minutes. Like if you're at all game with the idea that guns should be for everyone, and you know that is a right that everybody should have access to, talk to someone who disagrees with you on that.
Mm,
Whether it's somebody on the far right who thinks that certain people who like people in the LGBTQ community or people with different political views shouldn't have guns, or whether it's like your liberal aunt who thinks that guns are scary because they fire 100 rounds a second per trigger pull. And it's 5 minutes if you can empathize with that person first. And there's a I have a pinned post on my Twitter right now, how to talk to people who disagree with you. And it's what I use personally when talking to people. And it's just 10 tips for how to have an effective conversation with people who you disagree with. Um, you can find a lot of the stuff echoed in psychology journals. It's just a little bit easier to read with pictures. But definitely, if you can spend 5 minutes looking at that kind of stuff and studying those kinds of tips to help you be a better communicator, that would help you immensely and help the community, whatever you're talking about, immensely.
yeah, I
five
love that.
days, man, 5 days.
5 days.
Get involved with your local legislature. Like, I mean, like involved. Like you could spend 10 minutes and write to your legislature and support or opposition of a bill. But like if you believe in a candidate in your area, offer to go door to door for them. Offer to make cold calls for them. It sucks, but like you can do that. And if you're the person with the face and perspective that you have going and talking to somebody, you can change minds that way. And it is especially if the person that you believe in or the cause that you believe in is really important to you and you've got the time to do it. That's perfect.
Yeah.
um Definitely. I mean, write in your testimonies for any bills you agree or disagree with that are related to, not any
Mhm.
bill, that's you'll go crazy, but
Yeah,
especially
there's
gun
quite a few
stuff.
bills.
There's a lot of bills out there. Yeah, way more than
Yeah.
5 days worth. But
Yeah.
and money wise, I really like the organization Hold My Guns.
Oh,
um
yes.
they're
Sarah.
I yeah, I love what they're doing. I'm huge on mental health care,
Mhm.
taking care of yourself and knowing, treating us like yourself, like an adult. Like there are times where you might feel that you shouldn't be around guns, and having a place to safely store those without a government intervention to do so is crazy important. And they do so for other reasons too. But yeah, Hold My Guns is excellent. If you could throw $5 their way, that would go a long way for them, because having more capability to do that for people, whether it's getting more FFLs on board or just expanding their reach, would be excellent.
Yeah, Sarah, she actually came on the show a while ago,
Awesome.
and we need to get her back again because I didn't get the kind of reach that I think that episode deserves. So we got to like either republish it or just bring her back on, let her talk about what she's been doing since then. And I loved when I followed up with her. We talked about potentially. Well, she was actually in the middle of hosting some courses and classes to help reduce self harm and things like that. And it's like, man, that's awesome. Like
That
not
is really cool.
only not only is she kind of doing an organization that has very specific tools, but she's trying to expand that in her own self so she can introduce that and really help the world at large. Guys, thank you so much for watching or listening on YouTube. We're going to transition the last portion of the show over onto our locals community. That's armedatlas.com. Dot sorry, let's say that again. Armedatlas.locals.com, and hop over there, and we're just gonna kind of debrief and just kind of reflect and do just reflect and all the things.
Gotta moisturize our faces.
Right, right. Just
Maybe not, but
and well, I mean you can. So let me get that link for Hold My Guns. I went ahead and added it to the broadcast. That's holdmyguns.org. Guys, oh my gosh, I'm struggling with the
It's on the whole screen.
size. Oh my gosh, it's everywhere. What am I here? Just put
You
it
can
right
see it right
smack
there,
dab
right there.
in front of everybody. www.holdmyguns.org. I'm gonna get out. You know, there's something that I wanted to do was to actually give them a free sponsor spot. I've been kind of bad about that, but that's something that I'm going to have to be super intentional about to make sure that they can get the attention and some of the traffic that they deserve. Guys, click over to the link, considering throwing them $1. That's the challenge. $1. I think what I'll do is start kind of doing some sort of raffle or something like that for organizations like Hold My Guns. Like I've got some stuff that I could give away,
That's
and
cool.
like if you donate like a certain amount, that'll be the entry. And reward. You get to donate to something you like, and also maybe you get like a gun safe or something crazy like that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Or like some medical, or maybe we could even partner with like Obsidian Tactics, or maybe even yourself. Throw some stickers. I'm
We
volunteering you for stuff.
Yeah, no, but I'd be down. We actually did that once. We Obsidian Tactics. We they whatchamacallit, a plate carrier. One of their plate carriers, their
Mm-hmm.
LBXs, I think it
Yeah, yeah,
is,
yeah,
was
yeah.
we did a raffle, and it was donate to a nonprofit of your choice, or I don't know if we had a theme that time,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, that was one of the prizes, and it worked out great.
Excellent. So let's go ahead and real quick tell people where they can find you. And if they want to hop over to locals, great. But tell people where they can find you, buddy.
Instagram, at a better way 2a, the number 2, a betterway2a.com. We're on Twitter at a better way 2a, all that fun stuff. Mostly the Instagram. If you're looking to get in contact with me on Instagram, listen to our podcast, the A Better Way 2a podcast. We're super original with all of our names and keep everything the same. But
You're
that's pretty much
hilarious.
it.
Yeah, and our moderator went ahead and dropped their website for those of you
Oh,
who are
awesome.
watching on the
Appreciate that.
YouTube, a betterway2a.com. All right, guys. So we're going to go ahead and end on the YouTube side and end on the podcast, and then we'll go ahead and fire it up over on locals for those of you who are there. All right. Love you guys. Talk
Sweet.
soon.
Love you too.